Hey everyone, if you're just joining us, welcome. My name is Jamie here. I'm a head of editorial and content at Endowus. We're a digital wealth platform. And for those who are familiar with our Endowus webinars, welcome back. For those who are new to this, welcome. And thank you for joining us this evening. I know everybody must be very busy, and I appreciate all of you taking time on Thursday to come and join us on this webinar session that we have. I have two wonderful guests. I'm so happy and grateful to be sharing this platform with them, and I will introduce them in a moment. But before we start going through that, let me just quickly introduce Endows for those who may not have heard of us, or this is the first time that you've encountered Endows. Of course, a quick disclaimer here. And also to introduce that we have questions available, or platform available for you to ask questions, and that is the link at which you could go there. Now, what is Endows? So Endows is simply a fee-only wealth platform. We believe in helping you manage both your private wealth and your public pension. Of course, we're backed by these strategic shareholders and these venture companies that we have over here. Why our clients choose us? How are we different? Well, we're fee only. We believe that we should not be taking certain commissions that may not align us with the best interests of our clients. We're broad and we're deep in that sense. We make sure that we allow you to invest your cash, your CPF, and your SRS, right? To make sure that you also get access to expert advice, such that when you invest your money, you get it at a low cost, and you're able to access globally diversified portfolios here. So we're focused on giving you the right advice, giving you the right access, and at the right cost. We also have ensured that we access the world's leading fund managers to ensure that investing doesn't have to be something that you are afraid of. We make it easy, fuss-free for yourself. And as we go through the topic today, that we make sure that investing is made into something that is seamless for you, something that's easy for you, something that doesn't vex you or makes it difficult for you to understand. Here are the outstanding colleagues and leadership that I work with on a day-to-day basis, and I also then want to introduce. Before I go there, let's go to Joey here. We have two guests that we have here, and I wanted to introduce Joey. Joey is the founder of Ceph Finance. Maybe Joey, maybe you could speak more about yourself, why you guys started Ceph, and what does it aim to do?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me. And I'm, first of all, very honored to share the space with Endowus and Sophia to talk about personal finance. And yeah, I'm the co-founder of Ceph, and we are a digital community that mainly targets and helps millennials and Gen Zs of Singapore navigate issues around money, career, and well-being. So basically, like adulting topics that schools don't really teach you. And our main goal is to encourage conversations around all these topics, and we also engage experts to provide advice on them as well. So if you're looking for relatable and actionable content, you can follow us. We are mainly on Instagram. Our account is sav.finance, sav.finance. And yeah, you'll be able to see our content there, and we can have conversations on around these topics as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have Joey here because, for someone who just says, you know what, there's not enough content out there for someone like me. So I'm going to create this channel so that everybody can have this experience and be able to ask questions that, maybe you feel afraid of asking, right? And we're hoping that a webinar like that and partnering with someone like Ceph will create this space for you to be able to ask these questions. Let me also introduce Tanya. I'm very excited to have Tanya here. I skipped so quickly that I went to Sophia's page already. But maybe, Tanya, you want to just share a little bit about Sophia, what it does, what does it aim to do?
Sure. Thank you, Jamie, and honoured to be here. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Tanya Rolfe, co-founder at Sophia. I am a mum of two, a British expat living in Singapore. I'm very happy and privileged to be here with you all, so thank you for joining. I've worked in the investment space for around 6 years, firstly running an investment group here in Singapore for female entrepreneurs, and then a venture capital fund in Singapore again for women founders across Southeast Asia. And now I run two businesses. The first is to support women entrepreneurs as they raise capital for their businesses, and the second is Sophia, and we support women on their financial education journey. And that is what I'm here to talk to you about tonight: education, finance, and starting investing. So Sophia means wisdom in Greek. I get called Sophia all the time, but actually my name is Tanya, but I go by Sophia too these days. And we're a financial education company. We specifically target women throughout Asia. And the reason for that is that we're out to address the gender wealth and gender investing gap that exists between men and women. And whilst a lot of what I have to say tonight is sort of specific or slightly focused towards women, having the right mindset for investing is gender neutral. So men on the line tonight, please do not check out. This is for all of us. And actually, I think that it's great for men to also understand a little bit of that gender divide too. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Tanya. Again, I'm very excited again with having two of them, right? Because we are all aligned on this thing where the importance of financial literacy, making finance accessible for everyone, right? Of course, Sophia, and in fact, Self Finance also has a bit of a slant towards, addressing sort of the gaps that particularly women face. But, we think that things like hacks, having the right money mindset, again, it's gender neutral. Everybody should be able to find the right mindset for how you should think about money. Everybody wants to find a way to figure out their finances and to do it better. So again, once again, thank you very much, both of you, for being here. I want to just go through this, right? First of all of you are here and on this session, which means you've taken the first step to try and understand and make sense of your finance, right? Everybody is busy, we're all busy professionals, or, we're just going through, household demands, things like that, and yet you're here, right? So congratulations, first of all, on taking this important step. And, this is an opportunity for us, all of us, to share some learning, some tips, and also to hear from you, right? But we understand, and why we're having this webinar session is that we understand that many people don't know that how to start investing or how to manage their money. Sometimes they realize and understand that it's important, but you don't know where to start. How do we kind of ease into that process? And the three of us together, I think we've come to this idea that it is about ultimately your money mindset, right? So I've drafted a couple of these points, and these are some of the questions that people have in their minds, and that stops them from starting on their investing journey, right? Number one, I don't want to lose money. It's painful. On a month-to-month basis, I earn all that money, and I just don't want to lose it, right? Or I just fear understanding finances. It just looks so difficult, right? Is it just better for me to leave the money in the bank where it just seems safe? And if I don't understand something, maybe I shouldn't touch it at all. Or the third point could be, I just don't see the urgency. Why do I have to do my finances? So many people keep telling me that I'm supposed to do it, but I'm not really sure, I should do that, right? And the combination of these three questions, right, are main key questions, and it often comes into this point where it may create some anxiety. It may create this sense of what we call a scarcity mindset, where you fear losing things so much that you end up hoarding a lot of it, right? And it comes to money, particularly, it comes down to hoarding cash, typically, right? Where you put it in the bank, where you have this perception that, it's safe, right? And at some point, and it is indeed safe in the sense that you don't lose it. But, as we will discuss, what is the tangible value that comes out of that? So that the scarcity mindset. And the third is, quite honestly, procrastination. Sometimes people often think it's because of its sense of laziness. But if you read out a lot of literature out there, actually procrastination comes from this point of view of wanting to do it so perfectly well that you end up postponing it to the next day and the next day and the next day until you end up not doing it because you just want to do it well, and you just don't know if you're able to do so, and so you just keep postponing it, right? We want to transform that, and we want to go from this to this, right? This idea that, hey, we want everybody on this webinar session today to feel a sense of contentment. We want you to understand that moving from a scarcity mindset to this idea that you actually do have enough. And if you take care of it, you actually can build enough of a safety net to have enough through the years. And we will talk through your life goals from and the things that you need 1 year from now, 5 years from now, to even 20 years from now, right? But through it all is this sense of contentment that you're going to be okay, right? The second thing that we want to emphasize on is the sense of confidence, right? Rather than feeling anxious about it, we want to empower all of you to be able to feel confident that you can indeed manage your money, that even though all of us are very time stretched and we just find it very difficult to find pockets of time to be able to do this, I want to assure all of you that this can be done, and we want to be able to empower you to be able to do so. And finally, the last important point, I think the most important of all, to be honest, is that peace of mind, right? At the end of the day, finances is a daily matter, right? Every day you spend money, you earn that money, right? You spend so much time at work, and ultimately is to earn an income. You go home and you manage your household expenses, and essentially at the end of the day, you want your household balance sheet to look good enough, and you don't want to feel distressed, and you want that peace of mind. And we want to say that finance is a day-to-day matter. It's not something that's far away. Sometimes it can feel difficult to understand, but ultimately, if you have that contentment, you have that confidence, you're going to have that peace of mind as well. So we want to jump quite straight through into kind of things that we think about on a day-to-day basis. Budgeting, right? And of course, Joey's going to help me talk through some of these points particularly as well, right? So this is a particular formula that we have here. One of it is called the 50-30-20 budgeting rule, right? So that simply means that you spend typically 50% on needs, 30% on wants, 20% on saving and investing. And of course, at this point, we do want to say that everybody is going to be different. And this is more of a guide than a strict way of managing your money. But by putting this framework in place, it allows you to figure out where is your money going, and how should you be trimming some of your expenses, or how should you be ensuring that you invest. And be assured that we will talk about the investing part in the later part of this webinar, but I thought this is a good way to start thinking about it. Joey, I just wonder if you have other things that you wanted to talk about when we think about budgeting.
For SEF, we actually have a different sort of formula that we put out a lot, which is 4-1-2-1-2. It's a little bit more complicated than the 50-30-20, but basically 40% for us would be for needs, 10% to your savings, 20% to your investments, another 10 to your insurance, and the last 20 would be for all your wants. So everything that you want to buy and experience. And I think, like what Jamie said, there are a lot of different budgeting methods out there. And what's important is to find like a formula that works for you. So you can take time to like try out different sorts of formulas. You can take time to try out different budgeting apps and different methods. And what's important is to find one that you feel comfortable using and you'll be able to do it for the long run.
The sort of the math as well behind this. Maybe Tanya, maybe just to add to that, and any other formulas that you think about, or anything sort of guidelines that the everyday investor should be thinking about.
Yeah. So regardless of your formula, I think that the most important thing is in what order you do those things. So for me, the number one rule of money management is to save before you spend. So I think for a lot of people, they spend all of their money each month and they go, okay, I've got $500 left this month. That's what I'm going to save. And no, that's not the right way to do it, because you could spend every last cent in your account. So I think it's always to say, well, what is, when you're looking at that formula and you're deciding what that formula should be, and as Joey mentioned, there's multiple different ways you can slice and dice it and come up with what works for you. I think what's most important is that you're saving first. And I consider that the first rule of wealth is save before you spend. And then the second rule being invest what you save. So that sort of, think about building upon that. And then the third rule is being patient with that with that money that you've invested. And I think if you get into a habit of saving before you spend, I think that this is going to see, even if it's a really small amount, even if you're having a tough month and actually this month the car broke, or something happened at home, I needed a new washing machine, whatever it may be, you're still saving something, and I think that is one of the key fundamental principles of money.
No, I totally agree. I think this idea, it actually also helps to motivate you, right? This idea that I can squirrel away some part of what I've earned
Yeah.
and set that aside. And actually, that's a very empowering way. And many of the times before you start investing or, spending on the wonderful things that, that you can enjoy, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Being able to squirrel away some of that money is incredibly important because you don't know what's going to happen too, right? You need some money set aside, particularly for emergencies as well. So I think that's a great I just wanted to add on to something that's specific to Singapore. There are formulas out there, and of course, these formulas are sort of based on how globally people spend and save and invest. In particular, Singapore itself, of course, you have contributions that go into essentially our pension, right? And that means that some money is also saved. So the 50-30-20 rule typically goes into your take home pay, but there's also that element that we kind of maybe sometimes forget, but it's there and it's saving, and the question is, what are you doing with that? So in particularly, CPF is often used to pay down your mortgage, and what you can think about is that after I've set aside more than 20,000 in your CPF OA, there's your ordinary account, you need to set aside an emergency fund to cover that expense, of your mortgage. All right. Then after that, consider using CPF for long-term investments to tackle the impact of high inflation. And we'll talk about that later. But I just wanted to flag that to point out that in Singapore, there's also the additional amount of money that you're saving aside that sometimes you may forget and that you don't realize it's over there. I also wanted to, point out my own sort of practical hacks, right? Everybody wants to find simple ways to try and do this, right? So if you put a lot of stuff on your card, for example, right? A lot of the banks now can do this. Set a credit limit, spending limit, right? You can do this, and by doing so, straight away, every time you tap and you realize that, oh, the transaction doesn't go through, you probably realize that this card you've maxed out, not in the sense of your credit, but how much you're supposed to be spending, right? And I think I tend to find that's a good way. I mean, the reason I pointed out is because while we have all these rules, sometimes the convenience of everyday life means that we're often putting things of both our needs and our wants on cards, and sometimes that's difficult to manage, right? So on a very practical level, these are some of the things that we do. So for example, if both your groceries and your shopping for your wants both go on the same card, how do you kind of manage that? So that's one way to think about it, right? The other thing that I find interesting out there, right, again, they're not in textbooks particularly, but a lot of people who think about saving have thought about this. They said, very simply, if you're going to spend $100 on an outfit or anything, pair of shoes, a good meal, something like that, right? You have to ask yourself, would you be able to set aside another $100, the same amount of dollars, to grow that money, right? Because that money is going out. So you've got to figure out how you're going to grow that $100, right? Because you kind of have to make up for some kind of shortfall where you've already spent that money, right? And I find that this way sometimes disciplines yourself to say, maybe I shouldn't be spending that $100. Maybe I should be squirreling that away. Maybe I should be saving that. Or maybe I can postpone spending that money to next month, right? Just as a personal example, I have friends who are trying to get me to buy a turntable, right? I mean, this vinyl collection trend has gone on for several years now, and I'm very undecided. And so I have two records at home. I have a Fleetwood Mac record, I have a Bruce Springsteen record, but I do not have a turntable. And so the discipline I put on myself is that, you know what, these two records, which my friends gave me, trying to tempt me into doing this. I said, I'll do this when I turn 40. I will consider buying a turntable at 40 if the trend still survives. If the vinyls, out there are still of good quality, they haven't been bought up by things like that. So, things like that where you discipline yourself on certain items that you think you want to buy, and how do you hold yourself back, right? The third thing then, that's just the spending stuff, and the thing that we should think about is your goals, right? Beyond just thinking about your day to day, what's the life goal you want to hit? And the three of us are going to talk through that later. But the question that we want to ask is, beyond just saving, which is important, and we're not saying that it's not important, but will it be enough for you to hit those goals, right? And we have a really simple chart here just to talk about how, if you saving and investing are not quite the same. Saving means to set that aside to make sure that you cover for any emergencies, any needs that may pop up that cannot be fully expected. But then there's also investing, which is to take that money. There is risk embedded in that, of course, but investing allows you to grow that money, right? And all of us are going to live longer. All of us have demands. We have as our families, as we think about, for example, if you have elderly parents, you want to think about the expenses that will happen as they grow older. If you have kids, you have more of those expenses that may come up, and you need to find a way to grow that saving, and you need to be able to find a way to invest well, right? And so the earlier we had talked about the scarcity mindset, right? But hoarding so much cash is not actually very good for your financial independence and security. So we highly encourage you to save, but not to the extent of only saving. That this is not your only avenue. I do want to share that with Endows we had so many advocates who are clients of ours, longtime clients of ours, and a lot of them often come back to this idea of, I'm so afraid of losing money. And why? Because they went through a different relationship with money. Why? Because their parents went through Asian financial crisis, and very often the term crisis came about, and often, talking through money mindsets is about how you have that relationship with money. And that's how this scarcity mindset was created for many of our clients who wanted to talk through this. And then they realized that if I'm hoarding so much cash, I'm not actually growing it. And a lot of them came to this realization that this is not very good for their financial independence down the line. So, how do you set your goals right? Okay. There are life stage goals. Very simply, your needs through the years. What do you need in 1 year's time versus 5 years, right? And maybe Joey can elaborate a little bit more on this as well.
Yeah, sure. I think like in terms of life stage goals, it's pretty clear when it's shorter term. So we know that like in 1 year what we want to achieve, maybe in how many years you want to get married, how many years you want to have kids. But I think the tougher thing to determine is sort of like the word they throw around a lot, which is retirement planning. And people always ask like, how much do you think you need to retire? And I feel like personally as a young person, it's very hard to put a number to that. And one tip I have for that would be to imagine like what you want to do when you have like you're retired. So what do you want to be doing? A lot of people also know like where they want to retire in, like maybe Amsterdam, they want to go to the UK, and maybe use that as a starting point to figure out how much you actually need to achieve that. So that would be easier than to just come up with like this big number and then like not being able to visualize where that takes you.
I mean, the other point that was identity-based goals. Let me explain a little bit more about that. If you have a goal to say, it's a bit like exercise, where your trainer tells you you need to do 20 burpees, and everybody's going to do 20 burpees, right? But every individual is different, right? And all three of us on this webinar completely subscribe to this idea. Everybody's different. You need to have tailored ways of thinking about your finance, right? So identity-based goals is to really say being financially free means to do this, to have time to enjoy, retirement with your kids, to take care of your elderly parents. What does that mean to you for your identity? And we find that quite important, because then, you don't avoid the sort of comparisons where when we come up where you say, I'm supposed to save X amount of dollars because everybody is supposed to be doing this, but everybody's circumstance is going to be very different. And I think that is quite important for us to think through. For all three of us, Endows particularly, today about 4 in 10 investors on our platform are women. And we would find that, and I'm sure all three of us believe and see this, right? Women particularly take a more holistic view on planning. They often look through life stages. They need to understand, for these 10 years, this is what I need. This is what I need to go through. And therefore, I need to set aside, money. It's not just investing, but also insurance, and how do I make sure I take care of, for example, setting up an endowment kind of fund where you invest money in there to make sure that, in 10 years time my kid has something for his or her education. So particularly, for the women who are on this call, I do want to encourage all of you that, we see that actually women have that ability to have a holistic view of your financial planning, and you tend to avoid some of the short-term performance focus. In fact, there is a very good survey that was done by Vanguard, where it showed that, just after the GFC, actually more women were able to hold on to their investments, actually did much better compared to, for example, some men who traded out and as a result did not capture the upturn in the markets as well. So that's really something that we do want to encourage women in particular about. Tanya, I'll have you go through this. We have, of course, thinking about retirement goals. These are some of the formulas out there, for example, using the 4% rule and taking a multiple on how much you spend. Maybe, Tanya, you could just elaborate a little bit more about this.
Yeah, sure. So when I think about women or people generally in retirement, this is not specific to women, but the first step, I believe, in calculating what you need for retirement would be to consider your age now and when you would like to retire. So you can understand how many more potential years of earnings you might have ahead of you. Then where would you like to live in retirement, which Joey alluded to earlier? What type of lifestyle would you like to have? Are you wanting to travel the world, or are you looking to start skydiving as a hobby? What does your retirement look like? And what is your financial position now? Your current income and where you think your income will be when you retire at your planned retirement age. Then you would look at your risk appetite for investing and savings and sort of work out, what you could invest into, because every type of investment asset class will come with its own risk scale attached to it. So some will be more risky than others. So what does your risk appetite look like? And then the goal is really to build a realistic plan around what your current and future earnings are, and your planned lifestyle approach. And then you can start to ideally plan what that looks like. And then the second step is to calculate what that number might be. And much like the budgeting formulas, I think there's multiple different retirement formulas too. So, I have one that's on the screen, but you might use something different. But this is just a sort of back of the envelope style to help you understand. So the way to calculate how much you'll need at retirement is to multiply what you currently spend annually by 25. Because this is the number that you'll need to have at retirement, so that you can withdraw around 4% each year to live on. And this sort of will give you a 25-year horizon. There's no one size fits all when you're calculating your retirement, but I think that this would be, if you haven't got anything, I think this would be a really good starting point for you to think about and get your calculator out.
How about Joey? I mean, of course, SEF is a very millennial-focused platform, but actually, millennials should be starting to think about their retirement, particularly because we're in an era of higher inflation today, and people in their 30s, or in their late 20s, really need to start thinking about it. So, what sort of advice would you give to some of our people on the call today?
I'll say that whatever Tanya has just mentioned about calculating the formula is really good advice if you have just gotten started. But I would tell a lot of young people who have not even thought about their personal finance or haven't even gotten started, is I would say to take it easy and take time to really figure out and work out what they want, because retirement goal is a very, very long-term thing and it's only like one aspect of personal finance. So I wouldn't get someone to rush into it. Of course, starting as early as possible is obviously better, but also you need to really figure out what you want as well as a person.
Yeah, I think that's why all of us, while saying that there are guides and formulas, and hacks out there, ultimately you also need to know yourself and the kind of needs that you want. So you can combine, of course, the kind of formula that you have. And by having, for example, if you go back to the 50-30-20 rule, um, to be able to start that, you need to figure out what your needs are, right? And then that allows you to kind of tidy up the kind of things that you have. From then you figure out your needs. You realize these are more wants than needs. Actually, you don't need a new pair of sneakers, for example. Maybe sometimes you think you do, but actually probably you don't. Something like that, for example, right? Then from there on, then you figure out, okay, this is actually how much I need to spend in order to have a comfortable retirement. And then this is how much I need to be able to draw down, to have that kind of comfortable life that I want. So it's a process here, but we really want to say that the formulas are out there and for you to use, and then it helps you actually understand and create sort of self-awareness, and then from there you can tailor it to your own use. We wanted to also sort of go through. One of the things that people talk about is that gosh, finance seems so difficult, and I'm not sure I can regulate this, right? And so we wanted to create this way to talk about this. And one way to talk about this is dollar cost averaging, right? And I do see some questions on dollar cost averaging, and we will get to them at this point. Please also send all of your questions coming through as well. So one way you can do it, you can set instructions. Sometimes you can even tell yourself, oh, maybe every Friday is a finance Friday. I set, just before lunch, 11 o'clock to 12, maybe there are certain things I need to tidy up. Do I need to pay my credit card bill? Do I need to set instructions to do investments or anything like that, right? But that helps to create sort of a habit, right? And in terms of dollar cost averaging, you can, for example, again, everybody is different, but you can set instructions to have at least, 10%, out of, the amount of money that you have from your take home pay automatically invested, right? Platforms like Endowus, for example, allows you to do so. So you automate it. You sit back and let technology do this for you, right? This entire webinar is about money mindset and creating hacks to make things fuss free for you, right? So this is one way. The other way is that really dollar cost averaging just creates discipline for you by sheer nature of how it is, right? It allows you to capture the lows, right? You don't, it almost like, some people almost say that sometimes the best way to invest is to put your money there and to kind of not even look at it, right? You don't even log into your app, right? You automate it and just sit back and let these things do. Why do we talk about it? And we'll elaborate a little bit more as well later. But when the market lows, or in a downturn, and of course 2022 we've seen a lot of the market downturn, but it allows you to capture the lows, right? And people get worried about markets because they see it go down 10%, but actually if you're actually going to invest, right, and you're comfortable with that, this allows you to get something at a 10% discount, right? So sometimes the way we think about investing, you need to tweak it around to think, what is your mindset around this? If you have a long-term view, and you've already set aside the emergency funds that we talked about, that you've saved, like all three of us has talked about, that you really should save and keep that money aside, then you have that investing power, and you have that ability to say, you know what, there are lows, but I'm allowed to put some money there on a disciplined basis, capture the lows, and to be able to invest for the long term. The third is quite simply, there is this idea of the power of compounding, and it's often called as sort of the magical part of math, right? The sooner you start, the more time you have to earn, right? And by procrastinating, you're saying, I will find the perfect path, but in actual fact, actually all of that is kind of set up for you. And by waiting, you actually don't let time help you to capture that financial freedom that you're looking for, right? We also wanted to go through some of these money myths that are out there to debunk, right? And again, I would just go through three questions. First, I need to be an expert to start, right? Again, this is one of the reasons why people procrastinate, because they said, I have to be perfect at this, right? And oftentimes, by waiting, you actually miss out on the gains that you could have had. The second is that I need a lot of money to start, right? This idea that I'm going to keep, setting money aside until I have so much and then I can make that investment. Again, by not doing so, you don't let time do the work for you. And the last, of course, is that I'm afraid to lose money, and we will go through that. firstly, needing to be an expert to start, right? Actually, there are a lot of platforms that are out there, and of course, coming from Endowus, obviously, I'm going to talk about Endowus, right? Where we're saying that, you know, the reason why Endowus started is because we want to solve a problem, right? We wanted to solve exactly this problem where people are saying that I'm afraid to start and I need help with due diligence and I don't really know if I'm picking the right things. And so Endowus stepped in and said, you know what, we're going to open up access to, best in class fund managers. Come in with us. We are going to create advice portfolios, right? They're globally diversified, they're low in cost, right? And more importantly, we don't take commissions. We don't take the sort of commissions that has been a common practice out there. And really, what this means is that people who sell you these funds may be driven by a different incentive to get a higher commission. And oftentimes, because it's not transparent, you're not aware that you're paying for that, right? So the other thing is that besides looking at fees, the other thing is that you buy funds, right? And often, what's out there is that, based on forums that are out there, you want to get this quick win. There's a GameStop and meme stocks that were out there, for some time, I think last year particularly, right? And you want to realize that investing is not speculating, right? A lot of times people fear it because they've seen a lot of people lose money. And they lost money typically also because there was a lot of speculative element behind that, right? If you're basing it on forums, friends' recommendations, and it's not based on research, and it's time consuming to do a lot of stock research, right? And frankly, so many experts that are out there trying to pick the best stocks also kind of get it wrong too, right? And so your best chance as someone that you're not an expert, you're just starting out, but you know what, you're going to be okay if you pick the right partners to do so, and to find a value for money option out there for you, right? The other thing is I need a lot of money to start, right? And here's the two scenarios that we've painted for you. And this is just pure compounding, right? You put $100 into this index fund every month for the next 30 years, right? Again, I see a question out there about index fund and what do I do with it, right? This is what happens when you start early, right? And if you do it later, you would see that, the amount of money that you would lose just by not having compounding do the work for you, right? So we always often tell clients and people who are interested in investing, let time do the work for you, right? Don't hack it so hard, and try to find, the options, out there when actually they are already available. But you have to invest time. Just put that money there, be disciplined, and let time do the work for you there. The third one finally is I'm afraid to lose money. And this comes up quite a lot. Again, we like to talk about dollar cost averaging because, it's a discipline that, keeps it fuss free. Particularly, we wanted to put it in context in a falling market, right? We have data that shows that, in a falling market, the growth of a DCA portfolio can beat a lump sum investment, right, in these particular periods. So there are studies that are done on this. And so these are data points. We didn't just pull it out of nowhere, right? These are proper data points that show you that actually, if you do this and you're disciplined about this, you're actually going to do all right, right? And again, time in the market, don't just time the market. First of all, timing the market is difficult. If everybody had, this crystal ball to be able to figure out the future, they would have already done it. They probably would have made a lot of money, right? But what is more optimal and what it makes sense for more people, for most of us, is to have time in the market to continue investing, right? So earlier I talked about how, there are a lot of women out there who was very savvy, and during the downturn, they kept their money instead of trying to time the market again. And we have chart here that really shows you that, by timing the market, just missing out on a couple of days can cause you to lose that kind of value that you would have gotten if you had just stayed on in the market itself, right? So, I wanted to point these things out to say that, you started with this money mindset, uh, being anxious, you're worried that you don't have enough, you worry that you go into procrastination, um, and we want you to ultimately to get to this point where you are contented, you're confident, and you have sort of that peace of mind. Before I go into questions, I just wanted to go to Joey and Tanya as well. Any other sort of elaborations that you might have, particularly on investments. Maybe Tanya can sort of talk a little bit through that as well.
Yeah, sure. On your point around women and investing, and I think this feeds into our sort of self-limiting beliefs. So I have an opinion on that too. But we at Sophia, we have 4 kind of major myths that we hear regularly, and actually that some of them are slightly more geared towards women, but some of them are just the generic myths. The first one, and there's overlap with what you've talked about there, Jamie, but I'm not good with money. And I think the first thing that I think we need to clear up is that managing money has absolutely nothing to do with maths. So if maths is not your thing, it doesn't automatically exclude you from being good with money. It should not be anywhere near or attached to maths in any form of curriculum, because it is nothing to do with maths. Money management is about understanding concepts, and we can all do that. And it really is pretty simple, actually. And this myth, I think, is probably more prevalent in women, because the conversation coming from the wealth management and financial services industry at large is very male dominated, and we're excluded from that more often than not. And so I think that belief is that we're not good with money, or I'm not good with maths, so I can't be good with money. I think that's always present, and I think that that's completely untrue. The other one would be it's overwhelming, and we hear this an awful lot at Sophia. And I think for anything new, let's imagine you're in your 30s, your 40s or 50s, and you've spent decades probably with really bad money habits, because let's face it, none of us have been taught good money habits, because the world over excludes money management from our curriculum for some reason. It's one of those life skills. We're very focused on academics, and life skills like being good with money is completely overlooked, which is the most absurd thing. But in any event, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, you've formed all of your money habits yourself, because no one's taught you otherwise. So probably those money habits are bad. So here I am sitting here saying, hey, you're a 40-year-old, and I want to tell you, you're doing everything wrong, and like you need to rethink how you do it. Of course, that's overwhelming. That would be like me saying, you've been driving a car like this for 20 years, and I'm here to tell you you've been doing it all wrong, and I want to reteach you. It's overwhelming. And you've been doing it a certain way for a very long period of time. So my advice is always, if you're overwhelmed, is don't dive straight in with a cryptocurrency course and try to understand that. Like anything that you're starting for the first time, you start with the basics. But what you do, and what you definitely do, is you start, and you start with not a lot of money, and things like companies like Endowus allow that to happen, which is fantastic. Years ago we wouldn't have been able to do that. So you start where you're not overwhelmed, and you take baby steps on that learning journey, and that's how you overcome the overwhelm. The next is around lack of knowledge, and it sort of ties in with the overwhelming. It's education. Education is key, and surrounding yourself with other people as well who are also in a similar position to you. So I know I've got girlfriends who say to me, oh my goodness, I don't know where to start. And I said, well, Sarah doesn't know where to start, and Miriam doesn't know where to start, so you two should buddy up and learn together. And actually it's really fun. They've made it fun. They have money meetings and money walks, and you can learn together and make it fun. So I think everything comes back to education. And lastly, the last myth I want to clear up is that, and you touched on this, Jamie, is around money having a lot of money to invest. And we hear this probably daily at Sophia. And historically, that was probably true, because the barrier to entry for a lot of investing was very high. So people self-excluded because they thought, well, that's for rich people. But actually, Endowus and robo-advisors generally have lowered that barrier of entry. And just to give you an example, my 7-year-old invests via a robo with his allowance, and I can assure you he doesn't have hundreds or thousands of dollars to invest. He gets $5 a week from me, but he saves some money from his $5 every week, which he invests. And he watches the mountain go up and down on the app and on the web page, and he watches that grow, and his confidence is growing, and his knowledge is growing. And so you can overcome these just by with baby steps. When it comes to women investing, often women self-exclude because they believe all of these myths. But to your point, Jamie, women often do leave their investments for much longer than men do. Men are much more affected by, the news article saying the stock market's going to crash, they'll pull. Women are much more in it for the long haul. Now, yes, that does result in better results because we're chopping and changing less, which means that we're not incurring those fees. But the downside is that women are more prudent with risk management, and so we're not investing as much as men in the first place. So that is a problem we need to address.
No, I really like that sharing. I think what Tanya is really driving at, these are not criticisms in themselves, nor are they completely set in stone. Again, everybody is different, right? Regardless of sort of the gender buckets that we may be putting them in. But, the point is that, being able to set your mindset and taking a step at a time, I think is ultimately a lot more important. And take your own journey, and with platforms like Endows, you're able to be self-directed, you're able to ask questions. Endows has so much content out there, and anytime that customers want to engage us on a particular article or a webinar that we have, it's always available, it's free, right? In fact, as a little teaser, Endows will soon be rolling out a full-fledged sort of curriculum out there, so that everybody can sort of follow through your own journey, and take your own steps, to finding that sort of financial freedom out there. So, I really want to encourage everybody to make sure that there's a lot of resources out there. So be prepared and give yourself that ability to be empowered, to make those financial decisions. I wanted to go to questions because there are quite a few questions there. Maybe Joey, you could take the first question. I thought this was interesting. This person is a freelancer with irregular projects. She's not able to save and invest as much. So do you have any tips for freelancers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a freelancer myself, so I do relate to that problem. And I think for freelancers where we don't have regular incomes, like regular corporate people working in corporate sector, it's really difficult to follow budgeting formulas because our expenditure is the same every month. But there are some months where we really don't have clients, or there are some months that are really good. So for me, myself personally, I make it a point to save and invest a lot more than usual on good months, because you kind of have to anticipate that there will be slower months and there will be slower times of the year. And also another tip would be, after doing it for a while, you kind of know like which period are the lull periods, and you have to prepare yourself for that in advance. That would be my advice. Yeah.
Okay, so I hope that there are actually a lot of questions out there about careers and thinking about, but we'll come back to that if we have some time. Tanya, there was actually a question about the 4% rule, and I think we do have some time to be able to explain that. So maybe you could just take that question. How do you think about the 4% rule? I think it's referring to the withdrawal rule to take care of retirement needs.
Yes. So just to reiterate, what I suggest is the way to calculate what you'll need at retirement is to multiply what you currently spend annually by 25. And then if you get your calculator out, you'll work out that 4 times 25 is 100. So you can withdraw 4% each year. So if you've got 25 years worth of money available, and then you withdraw out 4% each year, you will then, you'll slowly be dwindling down your pool that you've saved. Now, I think I said earlier that you really don't have to follow this formula. But if you do, want to find out, if you want me to give you the breakdown of it in more detail, I'm happy to do so. And I think Jamie will show my email address at the end of this presentation.
So if I could just elaborate a little bit more. So for example, if you retire with $1 million in funds, you can withdraw
Yeah.
40,000 in your first year of retirement, right?
Yes.
After that, you may withdraw 40,000 plus inflation, right?
Yes.
So the numbers go, if for example, if overall consumer prices increase by 20% in the second year, you will withdraw $40,800, right? So we have that calculation is also available on the Endowus Insights page, and for this person who asked this question, if you'd like me to send you that article directly, I'll be happy to do so as well. But the article does point out sort of the calculations that you have. But essentially, it's a formula to be able to calculate how much you're going to need for retirement after taking inflation into account. So I hope that answers your question. So there is also another question about the 50-20-30 rule. Is this usually after CPF or before CPF? I think I pointed that out because CPF in itself, while you save money, you are also allowed to invest that money, right? Endowus allows you to invest cash, SRS, and of course, CPF. So the 50-30-20% rule also depends on how you think about how much is being saved in just the account and letting it using the ordinary rates to grow, or do you want to earn more than 2.5 from your OA, that's your ordinary account, by investing that, right? You also have the SA account. So I won't go through too much of that because I think everybody's journey is a little bit different. But essentially, if you want to use the 50-30-20 rule, you also need to figure out from your CPF how much it actually goes into investing, right? And you need to make a calculation on that. So CPF, the reason why I pointed out is because 50-30-22 again is a global formula, and different countries have different pension schemes. So you will have to be able to adjust that for Singapore's context. There is another question out there on dollar cost averaging, right? So this person, congratulations, you got a windfall. This amount is 10 to 15 times of my monthly investment. How would you invest this money? Tanya, I'll go to you first.
Um, could you say the question again? How would I invest a windfall in light of?
So this person believes in dollar cost averaging and buys into an index. So if this person got a windfall that is 10 to 15 times of this person's monthly investment, I think what this person is basically saying is, should I do a DCA or a lump sum investment?
Um,
Yeah.
uh, there's absolutely no way I can answer that, I'm afraid, because I cannot provide financial advice. I am an educator. I could give you some options, but I wouldn't be able to provide financial advice as to what best to put that into.
I think for this person, I would say I have a slide later, which actually maybe I could turn to that there as well. That if you want specific advice on this particular windfall that you have, please scan that QR code where my very fantastic colleagues from the CX team will be able to advise you properly. I think the way I would think about this is that in it depends, right? And unfortunately, sometimes you want a straightforward answer, right? Some people would say that, and there's data to show that if you make the right call to put a lump sum in there and you pick the right period, you generally do better over time. But it's very difficult for people to have that that will to just put a lot of money in there at one single point in time, right? There's often the temptation to look at that money and to see how fast it grows, and sometimes in a market downturn, it actually can fall. So that's why oftentimes we would advise that you average that out and apportion that out. So maybe you want to do it on a quarterly basis, so you divide that by 4. And then you put that out at the end of every quarter. So that may be one way that you could do it. Of course, everybody's situation is different. So, again, we would advise that if you want to have a more dedicated advice, I would say, contact our CX team and they'll be able to explain this better to you. I have, maybe Joey, just a question that, goes back to, graduates and thinking about careers. This is not so much strictly on investing. So this question is, as a fresh graduate, how can one balance between choosing a career that pays more versus what we really like to do?
That's a really good question. I think first of all, it really depends on what is it that you like to do, and also whether or not the career that pays well, like, is it something that you really hate, or is it something that you're okay with doing? And we also need to look at like what's your lifestyle habits, right? So and also your personality. So if let's just say you want to lead a lifestyle that you want to go have wine nights every week with your girlfriends, you want to spend a significant amount of money like fulfilling your wants, then definitely money plays a very huge portion, plays a very huge part in that. And then you need to consider like, okay, will I earn enough money to fulfill that sort of lifestyle that I want? And you also have to think about, if I do pursue my passion, depending on what passion it is, how much money can I earn from that? And will I, if I don't earn as much as the other choice, then do you have the ability to just forego that lifestyle that maybe you want? Another thing to look at is also personality. Like me personally, I would never be able to work in a place just for money and like not like my job. So I do have friends who literally treat a job as just a job. They don't like what they do. They do earn a lot of money, and then they take that money and they enjoy themselves outside of their work hours. So it really depends on what you think is important to you as a person. Yeah.
I do think it's about, we talked about this, right? Your relationship with money, right? What does money mean to you? What is it meant to do? What kind of independence and freedom do you want to get out of the pursuit of money? So, it's important that, we have that relationship and we think about that more carefully, because then that therefore affects the kind of way in which we think about should I take this career or should I take that career? Is that worth it? If I spend 12 hours at work at something I really do not like, but I get that money that allows me to have financial freedom. Maybe I want to retire by I turn 40. And maybe that's my identity and that's the goal I want. So everybody will be different. And we just want to make sure that, you have that at the back of your mind. I just wanted to flag this as well as we're nearing the end. I'm so sorry. We have so many questions, but I think we are not able to take it because we just got 2 minutes left. So this is Tanya's email. If anybody wants to contact her to get more information about what Sophia does, SAF Finance, of course, is available on social platforms. And we will. I think we will. I think there was a broken link for the Endows experience slide. We apologize for that. So we will put a link that's updated in the chat instead. And finally, we just wanted to get to this page. A lot of the stuff that we go through here, as part of my job, we write a lot of content out there. These are the numbers that we have, but what we're trying to say is, whether you're thinking about 4% rule, and I know there were some questions about CPF. I'm so sorry, we don't have time to be able to address them, but they are available. There are many articles that we put out there about CPF investing. Please, feel free to look at that. We've provided a QR that's super easy for you to just scan and go there. And if you scan it, you're going to be able to get a subscription box. Please, put your email in there so that we can more actively reach you as well, and to be able to address some of the questions that you have. And again, the CX reps are also always available to answer any of the queries that you might have. I will have to close this off at this time. I just want to thank once again Tanya and Joey for being on this panel. It's been great talking to like-minded folks who care about financial literacy, who want to plug a gap in education. I think all three of us believe very, very firmly and strongly that this is super important. At the end of the day, it's about creating hacks that you can use, but while making sure that everybody is different and you take that path that is suited for you. At the end of the day, though, finance is not that difficult. Take that path, and if you just take that step to start. And let time do the work for you. We promise that finance is just not going to be as scary as it may seem. With that, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And again, if you have more questions out there, please feel free to contact Andawas or any one of the panelists that are available here. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.